says art should be accessible. But what happens when everyone becomes the artist? Today, we're sitting with Rosie Samad, artist, business owner, and someone shaping how people experience creativity every day. But this conversation might not go the way you expect. Please give a warm welcome to Miss Rosie Samad.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Hey, Rosie, how are you today?
I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
I am doing good, and we're so pleased to have you join our platform today on Artistry Unplugged.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Well, we're just going to jump right into it, and it's just going to be a relaxed feel, and let's go for it.
Okay, sounds good.
Do you think everyone is actually an artist?
Yes, I do believe that. I think obviously it's open to, interpretation of like definitions of the word artist, but I think everyone has it in them to create something. And there are so many different kinds of art that I think, truly everyone has a little bit of something, a little bit of some kind of artistic creation inside them. And I think so often, when you're little, if you don't sort of immediately come out as like the artsy one, you kind of like write it off forever kind of thing. So I'm very pro like adults getting back into, coloring or any kind of artistic creation, because I think too often you kind of write it off very early on that it's not your thing and then kind of never touch it again. But I think it's good for everyone.
Yeah, because everybody has some sort of creativity inside them, right?
I think so too, and I think it's like therapeutic too. So I think it's important to tap into those like parts of your brain that do things like create.
Mm-hmm. I agree. What makes someone an artist, you think?
I think it's difficult to, or I think it's different artists would probably answer differently, I'm sure. I think it's really easy to think that you're only an artist if people are like buying your art. But I think it's more in just the creation of it. So I think if you make art, you are an artist. I think it's sort of as simple as that. But I think that could be an unpopular opinion with other artists. I don't really know.
Right, because everybody has their own, like you said, their way of thinking in that space, I guess.
Exactly. And I think it's easy to tie like commercial success to whether or not people call themselves an artist. But I don't think that's necessarily a part of it.
Have you ever met someone who thought they were but weren't?
I wouldn't say that. I think it's more often the other way around, that people, they want to shy away from calling themselves an artist or a writer or a musician because they aren't sort of, doing it in any official capacity or doing it for money or anything like that. But again, I think the creation is where like the title happens. So if you're making art, if you're making music, if you're writing, stories, like you are an art, you are a musician, you are a writer, whether or not, even if nobody's reading them or nobody's seeing it, like you don't have to have an audience, I think even. I think it's the creation part of it. So I think way more often it's the other way around, that people are artists and creators and they're too like shy to call themselves that.
That's interesting.
Or think that they don't deserve the title.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you think maybe where do you think they're getting that from inside? Maybe they're not confident in themselves enough, or
I think it's definitely like that's a part of it. Of course, like, imposter syndrome, it kind of affects everybody. I think that nobody really feels like they belong, or, a lot of people have a hard time sort of feeling like they deserve to be where they are and they deserve the successes that they have achieved. And I think that there's also an element of society kind of not putting as much like emphasis and also respect like on the arts, that it's easy to kind of shy away from it because it feels kind of frivolous, or like it's not, you know, somebody saying like, oh, I'm kind of getting into painting. It has a much different response than someone saying, oh, I'm going to medical school. Like people just think of it very differently. And I think what people's perceptions of art are like really affect the way that like you'll be perceived as an artist.
Mm-hmm. Wow. That sounds complicated.
It doesn't, I mean, humans are complicated. So anytime you get into like self-worth and self-esteem and self-image and all of that, it's very complicated, because we're kind of made up of, everything that's ever happened to us sort of affects the way we see ourselves and the way that we imagine other people are seeing us as well. So it is complicated.
Yeah. Wow. When did you first feel like, okay, I'm actually an artist?
I remember kind of always being interested in art, always sort of getting praised for my art, which of course like boosts that like self-image and like self-worth, and how you're thinking about yourself. From when I was pretty young, I had like an aunt who was a painter, and so I remember a lot of times kind of getting like praise from her, or getting compared to her, like, oh, you're going to be like her, because you like art or you're good at art. So for me, I remember sort of being drawn to art very early, but like the first time I felt kind of confident, like saying I'm an artist, is when I did start like selling commissions, or like finding people who actually wanted to buy my art, which again, kind of like I was saying earlier, sometimes I think it is difficult for people to separate commercial success and just, like creating for like your soul's sake. But for me, I mean, that was a part of it, as I felt like, I was also like a teenager, but I was in college, but it felt legitimized when once somebody like wanted to commission something from me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Did you take any art classes or anything like that in school, on the side, or?
I took art through basically like sophomore year of high school. And then that was the last like official art class I ever took. So most of my adult life has just been me just kind of trying things and trying and failing and learning, basically. So I haven't had a whole lot of a formal art education.
So that would the formal art be kind of like, was that theory? Is it art theory or theory of art or something like that?
Yeah, there's a lot of you know, art theory and like the basics of techniques and stuff that are taught in like a fine art education that I just do not have. I do a lot of things that are probably technically wrong, but I kind of like I hesitate to call it that, just because I kind of think there's no like wrong way to make art.
What made that moment real for you when you realized that you were an artist?
Um, that's a tricky question because it still sometimes like doesn't really feel real. And because even though I've like sold art before, I haven't seen a lot of like commercial success really. I don't support myself with my art or anything. So sometimes it doesn't, sometimes I still struggle with that, like feeling like a real artist and feeling that like imposter syndrome, like I'm not able to sort of call myself an artist because it doesn't feel like I, doesn't feel like I am, or doesn't feel like I do that for my job. But that's again just sort of a
Yeah.
probably a self-worth kind of issue, more so than anything.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right about that. What changed after that?
It's hard because it's hard to really say because my path hasn't been like very linear. With like I started, selling art and kind of spending more time on art, and then I, like opened an art studio. There was a lot of stuff in between of, working in restaurants and being a nanny and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So there wasn't sort of like a definitive, kind of before and after moment where it was like, okay, I'm an artist and now I'm gonna spend my life doing art. It wasn't like that. And I think for most people, it's probably not. I kind of always think like the eternal artist struggle is to, until your art can pay the bills, like making sure that whatever job you're working to pay the bills isn't like sucking the soul out of you so much that you can't make the art.
Yeah.
So
Ugh.
that's kind of like I feel like eternal struggle for artists. And that's kind of, I sort of sometimes feel like I'm still there, even though technically like a lot of my job is art. There's still the whole like business ownership part of it that can be kind of soul sucking. So it's difficult to kind of think of it as like a before and after sort of defining moment of like when I feel like I'm an artist.
Okay. Now, your business, let's name your business. So,
Um, it's Wine and Design. So it's a franchise, but I am the Winston-Salem location.
yes, wine and design. What made you go that route? Be a business
It,
owner on that.
it was a very sort of, I felt like the universe sort of put it in my lap right at the right time. When I was not really sure what I wanted to do, I was a nanny and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do next, but um, I knew that I wanted to kind of focus more on art. And then like 2 days after sort of having a I don't know what to do with my life conversation with some of my friends, they got an email from Wine and Design, like the Greensboro location, that said they were looking for franchisees for the Winston-Salem area. And they said, this seems like a sign from the universe because we were just saying that like something like this would be perfect for you. So I think you have to call. So that's kind of what started it. And then I just kind of came at it from that. So I didn't have any business experience either, didn't have any formal art education, but just kind of dove in.
Yeah.
And whether or not like it worked out is still sort of up in the air, but I definitely went for it.
Yes, that's good though. That is really good. Does making art accessible lower the standard, you believe?
um that's an interesting question. Um I think I guess it depends on like whose standard. If it's because I think everyone's standards are different for like what is considered art, what people call art. I think it's different for everybody. I think that at least like for me in my studio, like what I'm most passionate about and what I feel like the strongest about is making art accessible for people, like I was saying earlier, who, wrote off like being an artist at some point, and it's more focused on the experience and the journey and like than the actual final product. So I'm sure people could say that it lowers the
Mm.
standard because the final product might not be like this perfect polished thing. But I kind of reject that art has to be that way. So I think if somebody were to say that it lowers the standards by basically making it so everyone can do it, I think then the standard was too high.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's really each person holds whatever I can look at something, you can look at the same thing, and still we get different things out of it anyway. I mean,
Exactly. And there's all kinds of art that some people would like never pay more than $4 for. And across
mhm,
the world, there's somebody paying like millions of dollars for the same painting. So it's just, it's totally subjective.
yes. Have you ever seen bad art?
For sure. I think that I think if the intention is purely to make art and create, I think that there can't be a bad outcome of that intention. But I think if the
Mhm.
intention is to like make something that makes money or make like I don't know, but if the intention is you know, like icky basically, then I think it can produce like just sort of, but I think more so than bad, it's soulless art is what it is. And so you could say that it's bad, but I think the more offending part of it is that it's soulless. So I
Mhm.
think if the intention is to create something, then the art is good no matter what. Doesn't mean somebody wants to hang it up in their house, doesn't mean somebody else is going to buy it,
Yeah.
of course, but I think that, the only thing that can really be bad art is art that came from like a a non like authentic kind of place.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow. Woo. Do you ever hold back your opinion on art? You ever hold back on?
Um, I mean, it depends on who's. If the artist is in front of me, I think I would favor feelings over um truth. Even
Yeah.
if it was, I can always find something that I appreciate about art. There's always going to be something, especially if you're an artist. I feel like you can really find that even something that you just like don't resonate with at all, there might be, the way that the light is hitting in this one section that was like really impressive. Like there's always some little thing that you can appreciate. So if I was going to give a compliment to art that I really didn't resonate with, I'm sure like there's something I could find that I do appreciate, that I do, you know, like want to emulate, even if it's a painting that I would never hang up in my home or something.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. What's the difference between someone expressing themselves and someone actually creating art?
I think that you can't really, I think in a lot of instances, you can't really have one without the other. I think expressing yourself it can be done in so many different ways, so many of which are art, that basically the only, I can't think of a way that you express yourself really that isn't art. Because I think whether it's like the clothes that you're putting on or, physical art that you're making or music that you're writing or stories that you're telling or, even like spoken word, even speeches and stuff like that. Any way you express yourself, I think there is an element of art to it. So I would say that you can't really have one without the other.
About the other. Okay. That makes sense. That makes sense. You think, is there a line, you think?
Um, sure. I think there's kind of like hateful ways to express yourself that probably aren't don't feel very artistic.
Yeah.
um I think there's I'm sure there's room there for sure um that I wouldn't call it art. But again, I think it
Mm-hmm.
goes back to intention, that if your intention is to uh you know express something, then a lot of times I feel like what's coming out is art.
Are you an artist first or a business owner now?
um I would say it depends on the day. There's times when I really feel like an artist first. If I had my choice, it would be artist first always. Um, but there are certain elements of owning a business that are just so oppressively stressful that they always like take precedence,
I
you
get
know.
that. Yes.
So especially having like a brick and mortar location, it's much more like demanding with like having, like operations to worry about and stuff. So if I had my choice, it would be artist first always, but I think sometimes just like practically, sometimes the business owner part of it has to override that.
Does that happen often?
Yeah, I would say so. So
Yeah.
basically, I opened in 2017, and then I had a whole bunch of like construction delays and waiting for permits for months and months on end. So It took a really long time to actually get open from when I like signed the lease to when I was able to actually open the doors. And in that time, it's just all, like really stressful and everything. So by the time I actually opened, I was kind of already like emotionally and financially drained. Um,
Yes.
and then, so it took a while to kind of get things sort of, like for things to start falling into place. And basically when like once it felt like, okay, like I can finally kind of get my head above water, everything's sort of falling into place here. I think that we can really make a go of this. It's really going to be successful. That was in January of 2020, like when I was feeling that way. So then, of course, COVID happened, like the whole world shuts down. It's like even the best like
Yeah.
plans, you really can't make, you can't really plan for that. So that kind of, and the whole concept of wine and design is sort of like getting in a public place with people you don't know. And, a lot of times people are drinking. So they're, just like rubbing elbows basically with strangers, just in close contact, having conversations and stuff. So it was exactly the kind of thing that like all the COVID restrictions like dampened, which was really unfortunate. And then even after, things like opened back up again, because we had to like basically totally close for 3 months. And then even
Whoa.
after it opened back up again, I could only have 10 people in the studio at a time. So for almost a full year after we opened again. So it was a really obviously difficult time to be a business owner. And everyone, lots of other places were kind of going through the same thing. And even a lot of other like wine and design franchises didn't make it through to the other side of the pandemic. So I feel, lucky to still like be open. But then since then, it's just been everything just kind of totally changed after that. The way that people sort of make plans is just different. So it's just kind of refiguring out all the time, basically, like how people are kind of showing up for stuff like this and how people are, wanting to be in public places. Because I think it did kind of fundamentally change for a lot of people. The pandemic did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because we didn't see that coming. There's no way we could have. When you went to do the leasing and all that good stuff, we didn't know it was coming. That
I
was going to
know.
happen.
Exactly. Yeah. So it was a really difficult time to like be on the hook for this really, because in my first space, the rent was really expensive. And so,
Mhm.
it was really, it was tricky to know what to expect, what to do. I didn't know what was going to happen, when I had to close for 3 months. It was just all kind of like, I don't know what I'm doing. And then you look around and it's like, well, no one knows what they're doing. Nobody's ever done anything like this before.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Has business ever changed how honest your art is?
Um, no, I don't think so. I do a lot of, for me, there's sometimes a big separation between my art and wine and design art,
Mhm.
because like art that's made um, for like made for beginners basically to do in a class is much different than the art that I'm making like just for me. So there is a big like difference between the two, but I always feel like my personal art has kind of stayed my personal art and hasn't really um like been affected by it. I think
Mhm.
it's gotten better because I think that teaching the wine and design classes has made me like a much better artist just because you're emulating all these different styles. Because the original paintings come from artists from all different studios. So you're
Sure.
kind of emulating all these different styles and learning very quickly to do lots of things that you're not doing in your own personal style, like in your own personal paintings. So I learned how to do a lot of things that I wasn't doing previously, which I think made me a better painter.
That's great. Do you still create for you or for other people now?
Yes, there was a long time when I was only ever doing, um, especially when I first opened up my studio, and everything was just, like very stressful, and that was kind of every, like ounce of everything was just focused on wine and design. Um, that I didn't really paint for myself for a long time once I started doing that. And then um when COVID happened was the first time that I kind of painted just for me, like not a commission, so not specifically for someone else and not for work, that it was just painting to paint. When I was like forced to be at home for 3 months. That was the first
Yeah.
time I kind of like got back into it of creating just for me. And so that actually like just having that kind of that time off like helped you know like helped me to start doing that again. And then since then, I've been able to do it more.
Hmm. Do you, when you do your art, do you release something inside you, a releasing type of thing, or just going with
Um,
it?
I think to an extent, yes. I think that it's more, um, I think that it is therapeutic. I find it really therapeutic just to be creating in whatever way that is. Um, and so I do think that it's definitely like a release.
What's the part you usually don't say out loud?
Um, I think just that like sometimes it sucks being an artist. Like sometimes I wish that I had a more like conventional 9 to 5 job that I didn't have to worry about providing for myself with. I wish that it was a given that I was going to, like make rent at the end of the month. Um,
Mhm.
so I think, sometimes like the struggling artist life, it's
Yeah.
it's not it's it's exactly what it sounds like. Like it's
So,
completely self-imposed. Like I don't
mhm.
you don't have to do it this way. Um so sometimes I do wish that I had just like a regular, you know, kind of boring job, even though I know that like my artist heart would hate it. Sometimes the part of me that's like always stressed about money would probably like revel in it for at least a little bit
Yeah.
before I was like, okay, this has got to go.
Wow. What do you actually see in your space every day?
What do I actually see?
Hmm.
Um,
On the business side, I guess, and yeah, with the people that come in and out and just.
I see a lot of people surprising themselves, which is like one of the most gratifying things. Because
Mhm.
there are so many people, like more people than not, come in and say, just so you know, I'm not an artist. I can't do this. I can't draw a stick figure. And so many people come in so ready to not succeed that they really surprise themselves when they make a painting that they're like, oh, actually, this looks pretty good. So I
Mhm.
love seeing people surprise themselves and impress themselves. I see a lot of that. And you see a lot of I mean people's personalities just jump out like in the first step in a class like that. So you see a lot of what makes people tick. You can like
Mhm.
pick out the, perfectionists in the first step. Like as soon as you get started, you know who's a perfectionist, who is a little bit more easygoing. So you see a lot, you just see a lot of people and like what makes people people.
Yeah. Do people want to be artists or just feel creative when they come to you?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think some people, they do come because they want an outlet for the kind of artistic impulses that they already have. And some people are so sure that they don't have a single artistic impulse in them that they are, convinced that like it's not that it's not going to go well, or it's not that you're not going to be able to kind of pull it out of them. Um, so I think you get both.
What do you think people really come in for?
I think a lot of times it's just a little bit of a break from their lives. And I think it works because it pulls you out of your comfort zone just enough that that you're focused on what you're doing and you're not thinking about what else is kind of going wrong in your life at the moment.
Yeah.
So it's kind of disrupts everything just enough that you're fully focused on what you're doing, which in turn, I think kind of eases, the sort of like thoughts that are on repeat all day that kind of stress you out.
Yeah, that's
Quiets that
definitely it.
voice for a little bit. Yeah.
Hmm. What's something about the art world people romanticize about that isn't real?
I think just the commercial success aspect of it. I think a lot of people who are uh or the artists that you see the most are like on places like TikTok and things like that. You see people who have had success. Um, and I think that's not or commercial success, I should say. And I wouldn't say that's I wouldn't say that's like the norm or a guarantee. I
Mm.
think it's probably possible for everyone, but I think a huge part of achieving that commercial success, I mean, there's definitely elements of like privilege and just being able to be in the right places with the right people at the right times. But then there's also um, a there's a huge part of it where like promoting yourself and doing all the business aspects of kind of selling yourself as an artist is like a whole other full-time job basically, and it requires skills that like not everybody has. And so I think that, you could be a great artist, but if you don't know how to sell your art, you might never see commercial success. And I think that's probably the part or the case for a lot of people. Um,
Mhm.
or even if they don't, even if they like could sell their art, it's very time consuming, building up a following as like on social media platforms and connecting with people who, it's like a very specific Venn diagram of people who appreciate art enough to spend money on it, appreciate your art
Mm.
specifically, and have the money to spend on the art you're making. It's a very small little Venn diagram
It
there.
is.
The
Yeah.
overlap is small. So, building an audience that's big enough that you're actually reaching the people that want to buy your art, it's tricky. And
Mhm.
it's requires a lot of dedication, that, it's time consuming. So I think that's what's hardest for me personally. And when I talk to other artists, I think a lot of them feel the same way, doing things like making content of your art. It's like a whole other job. So it's just, it's just not easy.
It's not
Like
easy.
sometimes actually creating the art is the easiest part. Um, but that, but it's difficult to get from there to like, big commercial success that you sometimes see.
Hmm. Do you think social media helps with that? How do you
100%.
think? Yeah. Yeah.
And I think things like TikTok have made it even easier because really anybody um can like anything can blow up at any time basically. So you never know um like when something might pop off you are and then you're able to grow an audience. Um but it takes kind of consistency and a little bit of luck. So
Hmm.
it's so much easier than I'm sure it used to be, but it's still tough.
That's still tough because you still
Hmm.
have to build all, the followers and all that good stuff, and just
Yeah.
a
And
lot
you
to.
still have to make, you have to make the videos that are going to draw people in. So um if you don't have a lot of knowledge about it or you just don't have um you know the if you just don't have like the right eye for it for like creating content like that, sometimes it's just never going to reach the right people, which is sad.
Mhm.
There's to think of all the artists that might
Yeah.
never be discovered just because they aren't interested in, making content of their art. They just want to make the art.
They just want to make the art. That's why they want to focus on the art. And you got to do all the other stuff and focus on the other stuff too.
Yeah.
What's the? Uh, it's always something.
I know.
What do you wish people respected more about artists?
Um, I think that I wish people respected the process. I think a lot of people appreciate the finished product more um, than the actual process. And I think, especially, I mean, it depends on the art, obviously, but I think it's really easy for people to say, well, I could do that. And that kind of, lowers like their value of it and their respect for the artist. But um, I think, I don't know, it's much, I mean, to somebody saying like I could do that, I'm like, good, do it. Like
Go for it.
I encourage you to. Everyone should. If you think you can do that, I think you
Mhm.
should.
Mhm.
Um, I think
Absolutely.
everyone should. But I don't know, it's difficult because on a sort of personal level, I think people do sort of respect art, but I think when you get a little bit higher, like in a um kind of like legislative level, like
Yeah.
there's no respect, and at like in court, like high level like corporate, there's like not a lot of respect um for artists. So the push, like I'm sure it comes up in a lot of your conversations, like
Mhm.
AI for artists, but the push to, not hire graphic designers anymore because AI can just spit out something that you're looking for. I think that's sort of where we're seeing the most kind of disrespect for art in general, is just in the
Mhm.
this shift towards just having AI do it. Um, so that's kind of where I see like the most disrespect.
Yeah, I think so. And also, did you hear this other thing also, like, if you're not making money doing art, then you're not an artist. There's
I
that.
know. And I think it's difficult for even for me to kind of separate that, because the commercial success does feel validating. So that's always, I mean, that's a huge part of like the classes that like I'm teaching at Wine Design, is like, anybody's an artist and you're allowed to call yourself an artist as long as you're creating art. You don't
Mhm.
necessarily have to be, selling it. But then I on the other hand, I know that me personally sometimes struggle with feeling like, um, you know, like not a real artist because I like don't support myself fully on my art. So it's
Mhm.
definitely tricky, but I think it's easy to say that, to connect commercial success with just, you know, artistic success.
Mhm. That's so cool. I mean, it just seems so wrong.
Yeah.
The starving artists are just,
But I know, but money, money is money is everything to a lot of people. And it's if people weren't worried about money, there'd be way more artists.
yeah, I believe that. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely, Rosie. Why does that matter to you personally as far as the respect for art?
Um, I mean, as an artist, it matters because if people are, you know, plugging, like I do a lot of pet portraits. So if people are, plugging into like AI, that they want like a portrait in or a pet portrait in a specific style, and it's just chugging it out for them for free, that's
That's cheating.
that's
No, I'm just
right.
kidding.
That's, you know,
Yeah.
that's, it's like potentially taking a job away from a like a real person, which obviously I have like take issue with. Um, but um but also like what I say, like legislatively, um, like art not getting respect, it means things like the arts being the first thing to get their funding cut in schools. It
Yeah.
means that, every generation has like less and less like sort of artistic cultivation, just because, somebody way up the latter decided that art isn't important, and that has a direct effect on kids trying stuff out like art, music, theater, dance, that kind of thing. Um,
Mhm.
there are lots of schools that don't have any kind of arts programs. So, um, I think exposure to art, uh, eh, like hands on or not, um, I think it's crucial. We had a like cultural arts, um, like program at my elementary school where we would have like my mom was actually in charge of like booking some of the acts for it. And so we would have these like performers come in and it was like all different kinds of stuff. But it means that you saw dancers, you saw, people, you saw like puppeteers and things like
Mhm.
that. Just all kinds of things that when you're a little kid, you don't know that like, oh, somebody can do that. As it like when you're a grown
Mhm.
up, you can grow up and you can make art. Like, kids don't know that until they see it, until you tell them that. So
Absolutely.
if you cut art in schools, you're cutting down lots of little artists, which just hurts my heart.
Yeah, that's so true. And I don't know why they go after the art first before anything else. It seems
Because
that
this
way.
guy has a long history of, being disrespected and feeling like it's not important. But I
That
think it's
part.
very important. And it's
Hmm.
important, for like the whole sort of health of a person. I think art is a big part of it.
Hmm.
Either creating or just appreciating, getting like immersed in it.
Hmm.
It's a part of the human experience that everyone should partake in.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on Artistry Unplugged. And where can the viewers find you? What platforms can they find you on that they want to come to your establishment, do some art?
Sure. My personal artist Instagram is Rosina Samad, so that's ROSINASAMAD. And then our wine and design studio is WND Winston-Salem on Facebook and Instagram. You can check us out. Come take a class yourself, or if you just want to pay another artist to make art for you, you can. My DMs are open for commissions.
Yay! Thank you so much for coming on Artistry Unplugged.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
What I'm taking from this is that some of you don't lack creativity. You just never been in the right space to see it. I'm Deniz Me'chel, and this is Artistry Unplugged. Until next time. Bye.